What's up, guys? Iceman here. Welcome to Meditations. So the world's on fire, isn't it? All this weird shit going on. I was just on an investment account that I have, right? That I just started not too long ago. I was looking at Wokecoin, and I know I talked some shit about Wokecoin in the past. Bitcoin. But I bought a little tiny tidbit more. I'm just seeing it go up, and I'm like, what the hell's going on here? It's at about 72,000. Yeah, way to go, Ice Boy. You bought it at the peak of its market. Good move. Now we'll see what happens, though. But world's on fire. What an age of information and deception that we live in, isn't it? Keep getting all this shit in the mail about the upcoming election, of course. You know what I'm saying? And just how deceptive all this shit is. What can we trust? Is there a cure among us? Let me know in the comments below. But basically, it seems like at a time like this, and I know I mentioned it in my previous video. Now, part of it maybe was just fear-mongering, all right? Just like this title. I'm going to call this video, The World's on Fire. But to some extent, depending on who you ask, and depending on your worldview, etc., maybe it is. Metaphorically speaking. Like I said in my last video, how some years ago I read about this, how a lot of these nations, they have nuclear weapons now, right? You got Russia, you got China, you got Iran. Don't they have them now? Or do they not have them now? I'm not really sure. The United States, of course. Israel, don't they have them? I mean, a couple other countries. Some of them have a lot. And what I read some years ago was that when one launches one, and it gets launched at a certain country, you know, that country has a retaliation, like automated system where it launches their fucking nuke back before the other one even hits, right? And they call it a nuclear winter, is what they say. Where, you know, the enemy shoots it at the other guy, and then before it hits him, the other guy shoots his like this. It just blows everything the fuck up. No, it doesn't blow it all up. But I mean, you know, it spreads the shit all over the place. And they say that it could kill every living thing 30 times over again. Now, is that true? Or is that fake news? I'm not really sure. Some say this stuff's just a bunch of mumbo-jumbo. They say, oh, Iceman, those nukes, those aren't even real, man. Haven't you seen the videos? It's all stop motion stuff, made in like the 50s with little trees that go back. It's just stop motion. I'm not saying you're wrong. They're like, oh, but what about that other thing that happened with all them folks in the East who died from the nuclear fallout, this and that? You know, is that just, I don't know what they would say to that. I mean, I think it's all real. I think. But is it? Let me know in the comments below. It seems like in a time like this, with all this unease, everybody's looking at that US dollar, right? We're seeing all them prices go up. Been printing the hell out of it. $35 trillion in debt. The private bank conglomerates. Who the hell owns this shit anyway? There's a bunch. I mean, it's a bunch of conglomerates that are like, they're not even based here in the United States. It's really fucked up. These are the ones that we're indebted to. We keep printing this money out. When the hell, how much longer until the folks who are relying on this are like, well, We can't trust this anymore. They keep inflating the hell out of it. It's like that Zimbabwe note. You guys ever heard of that or seen that? That $1 trillion Zimbabwe currency. And of course, when that happened, folks were like in bread lines and shit. There was food rationing, scarcity, the destruction of their currency and all that. Because they did something similar where they just kept printing their currency, right? So it seems to me that if the world, if they're like, you know what? We're tired of this United States mumbo jumbo. We're tired of this military industrial complex. We're tired of this U.S. trying to be the police around the entire world. You know, we're going to make our own currency. And is that what that BRICS currency is? The BRICS nations, they say? It's Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa and others. And if they're like, okay, well, we're going to establish our currency and we're going to actually have it backed by gold. And we're going to kick the US dollar out of our economy. You know, in which case we'll have trillions and trillions of dollars coming back to the US. And nobody's going to want to give us stuff anymore. And all because they don't want the money. You know, if they don't want the money, they're giving the money back. So they're not going to give us the stuff. You see what I'm saying? And all the fucking stuff is made over there, isn't it? Even the medication, they say 90% of the medication is made in Big Red Dragon country. The fuck is going on here? And you're telling me that they're starting to work on their own world reserve currency on their side of the world? Can't really blame them, right? What the fuck, man? Whoever, I like the gold and silver, and I had a slice of it a minute ago, but I think I brought it back upstairs. But it used to be backed by gold. But then in the 70s, some guy, I think his name was Nixon, he signed the dollar off the gold standard so that they can inflate the hell out of it to oblivion. You guys see where I'm going with this? Is the world on fire? How about your... how that song goes. No, I'm just fucking with you guys. But, I mean, so if there's like this nuclear winter thing always just looming over us or whatever, right? On like a worldly scale. And if we're printing the dollar to oblivion, and if it's the world reserve currency right now, so they all kind of have to base their finances off of it. But if they're trying to work on their own, you know, these other heads of the world, the most powerful ones, if they make that shit, like I said, they kick all that shit back to us, the United States is fucked. There's really no other way to say it. You know, I mean, I think that's going to cause chaos and destruction and collapse beyond anything the world has ever seen in recorded history, right? I mean, you got everybody reliant on the grid, man. This isn't like the 1920s, wherever the hell that shit went on, where like everybody and their uncle had a farm. You know, this is like we're going to the damn food comes from the grocery stores nowadays. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't come from the farm or whatever. It comes from the damn grocery store. And like I said, the medicine, everything else. It seems like you got to bring power back to the assets. You got to make them produce. You got to make them produce in order to get the world to gain their trust in it, so they don't want to kick it out of their economies. You got to produce, man. Like in the gold is a good example because I have some and it just sits there, right? It just sits there and it doesn't produce anything. And then I'm looking at the stocks and I'm looking at WorldCoin, which, like I said, I bought a little bit. But I look at the S&P 500 and all this other shit. This ain't financial advice. I'm new to this shit. But you see what I'm saying? I'm seeing that that's actually producing, not the WorldCoin. The WorldCoin's not producing, but the S&P 500 is producing, right? But the gold's just sitting there and it's not producing. So part of me's like, why the hell do I have the gold? I could cash this in and put that cash into the S&P 500. It'll produce. You know what I'm saying? But gold is like a doomsday money. I mean, this is doomsday shit. I don't think I'm going to sell it. I mean, it's $2,700 an ounce right now. It's the world record high. It's the highest it's ever been in terms of the world currencies and the US dollar specifically. Because they're scared. Yeah, they know. they know that something fishy going on, man. You know? So they're buying it up. Them banks, them big conglomerates, they're buying that shit up. All over the place, Big Red Dragon country, they buying that shit up. And because the dollar's losing its trust and losing its value, so they're seeing everything else go up because it's losing its purchasing power. It's fucked up. So you gotta, I mean, it seems like you gotta bring it back. You know, I had a buddy who's from, he's an immigrant from Thailand or something. Not Guam. Some other place. I can't remember what it's called. Guam? I don't think it was Guam. It was something else. A little guy, you know? He's older than me. He's a neighbor of mine. We became dogs. He would come over here, bing bong, ring the doorbell. My dog goes off. My wife was like, oh my God, is Andy here again? But I'd go out there and talk to him, and that was his like American name was Andy. He came here and he was like 20 years old. But he went to Texas, and then he came over here to Michigan. And he was very generous. He would bring me, he'd take me, he didn't have a car, he didn't drive. I think he got in a little bit of trouble back in the day driving, you know what I mean? So he couldn't really drive. But, so I would drive him around. He'd be my neighbor. I'd take him. He'd like, hey, you take me to the grocery store? I'd be like, yeah, I'll take you to the grocery store. And he'd be, well, what you want? You know, I'd buy him this or that, or I mean, he'd buy me this or that, and he'd be like, let's go out to eat. And then we'd go out to eat, and he'd pay for my meal. Just really generous guy. And I bring him up because he came here with like no education or anything, right? He was like in his 20s or something. And the economy was doing okay at the time, but it was doing even better when I knew him, which was like 2017, 2018, 2019. Is when he was my neighbor here. And factories here it was good pay. In my area, it was starting at like $21 an hour, which is a lot for Michigan in those days, all right? This is before that massive inflation, all that shit. And the jobs were abundant. He'd go from job to job to job just because he was he wanted to try new things, and they'd always be paying him $20-some an hour, right? So the good thing about that is when you break it down to its source, like an economy or whatever, you got to break it down to the production. And if your production is everywhere else, you're going to be fucked. Because you take it back to there's all that overhead and everything comes in, you know, it's cheap because there's a lot of wiggle room there. Or it tightens the margins when you have to ship everything from thousands of miles away. And there's less competition too, because if it's on your home ground, you could have competition everywhere. But the good thing about that was it was high paying. It was kind of a bottom level, entry level thing where anybody could kind of jump in there and join up. And from there, like I wouldn't want to work in the factory. I mean, I wouldn't want to do that anyway. I wouldn't want to do that for my whole life. But the thing is, it's a great stepping stone for anybody, you know, as long as you're willing to work. And then you can move up a little bit in the factory. But more importantly, what I think I would do, save the money, make good financial decisions, save the money, you're making good money, live minimally, and then you could start investing the money, and boom, you could be out of there in no time. You know what I mean? And you could be on to be an entrepreneur or whatever, a hustler. You could try to start your own business, or you could just keep working there. I mean, whatever the case, work there part-time, try to be a hustler on the other side. I mean, whatever. That's the good thing about having... That's one of the good things about having the productivity here is it's a great stepping stone for people to get familiar with the system and to maybe branch out if they want and make good money while you're doing it. You know what I mean? I mean, it seems like that as at a time like this, when the world's on fire, people got to look out for themselves. I'm talking about like nations, you know what I mean? Like the one that I live in, for example, which is the one that I care about the most because this is where my ass is. United States, and this is where my wives are. You gotta self-preserve, man. And with that being said, if your medicine and everything's being made somewhere else, you gotta bring it back home. You gotta be able to be like, you know what? Even if the world over there decides to kick our dollar out of there or whatever, or if they get a big war or whatever, we gotta be able to sustain on our own, you know? We gotta have the medicine here, have the food here, have the cars here, have the electronics here, have the iPhones here, have all that shit here, use the energy here. You know what I mean? This is the only way. And it seems like right now, like with this election coming up, these are two different ideologies. You know, one of them is all about, well, we need to tax the hell out of the imports and give tax breaks to those who move here, who move their manufacturing here. Then we can have all those startup jobs again that I mentioned a minute ago, and give them tax breaks for doing it, and give some incentive for manufacturing to happen here to strengthen the dollar. Or the other route is sort of like a government forced way, right? Like the forced, what's it called? The price controls, which is probably a really bad idea. When you give all the control to one singular entity, which is the government, they become the big corporation then. They become the capitalists then. And they get all the power. So it vacuums all the power up to one entity. And then they say, okay, you have to make this and work on this, and you have to keep it at this price. And if it's not sustainable, because it won't be, like with the food, what is it? The food price controls, right? Like if you look at the numbers right now, all these food producers, they're working on 1.6% profit margins. So you can't tell them, well, you have to just price your food less, because they're just going to go out of business, or they're going to move out of here. And then there's going to be scarcity. You know what I mean? So that's not the method to do it, unless if you're going to say, well, we're going to force you to do it, and we're going to have forced labor and all that shit. And I just don't, it doesn't seem like that ends well. Isn't that what happened in the Soviet Union? Aren't they forced the labor? And I mean, that's part of what happens in Big Red Dragon Country. So it seems like the only way to solve this and still allow for that thriving competition within, it seems like that's the only way, is the other method. I mean, let me know in the comments, am I missing something here? It seems like you got to tax the imports, you got to deregulate here, and you have to incentivize folks to make shit here, not force them to, but incentivize them to, and tax the ones who are shipping it all in to the point where they're going to be forced, in a way, to just make their fucking factory here. You know what I mean? And then you can have that ground up economy again, where you got the guys. I mean, you can come from anywhere with no experience, no education. You don't even have to fucking speak English. And you can start working in the factory and build your way up from there. Because without them, without the factories, I mean, you're taking out a massive part of this ladder, as far as I see it. You're taking out the bottom from it. It's a good bottom. I mean, this guy was making $20-some an hour. And here I am, a hustler. I was like, maybe I should go over there. I mean, I didn't want to, but unfortunately I was hustling enough and experienced enough to where I was able to find my way. But I mean, it was enticing to me. It's like, shit, that's a lot of money, especially in those days. Some of these folks making $26, $27, $28 an hour in those days. But I cherish some things more than that, you know. I want to be free. I don't want to have to go work for the man. So, yeah, I intend to keep it this way. But, I mean, I'm curious what you guys have to say about that. What's the course of action here, you know? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you all tomorrow. Peace be with you.